All right, let's talk about what happens when a country's digital reality gets completely split in two. Today, we're diving into a massive cyber crisis in Uruguay where you've got two totally different stories playing out. On one side, you have the official government line, hey, just a minor technical glitch, nothing to see here. But on the other side, a whistleblower is screaming from the rooftops about a catastrophic digital heist. This is a big one, so let's get right into it. So picture this. It's September 30th, 2025, the end of the month, an absolutely critical time for any bank. They're processing payments, closing out accounts, the whole nine yards. And then suddenly, Banco Hipotecario del Uruguay, let's just call it BHU, it's a huge state-owned mortgage bank, it just goes dark. I mean, completely offline. The network, the website, all their communication channels, poof, gone.
Okay, so what in the world happened? Well, first, let's take a look at the official story. The version the bank and the government started putting out. How did they explain the sudden, total shutdown to the public?
The term they landed on was incidente informático, which just translates to an IT incident. And you got to pay attention here because the language is absolutely key. It's so technical, so neutral. It's clearly designed to stop any panic before it starts. The message they're sending is, hey, we're just taking a precautionary step here to protect your information. It's not, a reaction to a disaster that's already happened.
And all their public actions really backed up this narrative of, we've got this under control. They shut everything down, issued the standard apology for the inconvenience, kept a few essential in-person services running, and of course, they assured everyone that their best people were on it, working around the clock. So from the outside, it just looked like a pretty responsible, maybe a little drastic, response to a technical glitch. But of course, that's not the end of the story. Not even close. Almost immediately, a completely different and frankly, way more terrifying version of events started to bubble up. And it came from a really well-known figure in Uruguay's cybersecurity scene, throwing this whole official narrative into question. And right here, this is the heart of the conflict. You've got the government on one side saying, minor IT incident, totally manageable. But on the other side, you have security expert Alberto Hill, who, through his platform, the Cyber Midnight Club, is calling it what he says it is, a catastrophic ransomware attack. He's not just making vague claims either. He names the group, Crypto24, and says this wasn't just an attack, it was a massive data heist. 700 gigabytes. That's the number that the official story conveniently forgot to mention. To put that in perspective, that is a colossal amount of sensitive client data. We're talking mortgage information, personal details, financial records, everything. Hill's allegation is that all of it had been ripped right out of the bank's servers. So, according to Hill, here's the absolute kicker. The shutdown, it wasn't a proactive step to protect the data. No, it was a desperate, panicked reaction because the data was already gone. It's like locking the barn door after the horse has already bolted. He even reported that the attackers, this Crypto24 group, had already gone to the dark web and published their extortion demand. They were holding all that data hostage. So this just raises a massive question, right? Who is this guy, Alberto Hill, and why is his version of the story so radically different from the official one? Well, to really understand the answer and to get why so many people in the tech community are actually listening to him, we have to rewind the clock a bit. We need to go back to a really controversial case from 2017. All right, let's really get into this backstory, because what happened to Alberto Hill back in 2017 is absolutely crucial. You could argue it set a dangerous precedent for how the state deals with uncomfortable truths, and basically set the stage for the exact crisis we're seeing in 2025. So, for years before this whole thing, Hill was acting as an ethical hacker, a white hat. He found a major security flaw in a medical provider system and did the right thing. He reported it. But then, in 2017, a different hacker comes along and exploits that very same provider. And guess what? The police trace the IP right back to Hill's apartment. They raid his place, and he ends up getting convicted based almost entirely on a so-called verbal confession that's been disputed ever since. Yeah, and during that raid, the police walked in and were just blown away by all the tech they found. We're talking laptops, stacks of hard drives. They even found a Guy Fawkes mask. They literally told the media they had hit the jackpot. They immediately painted this picture of a master cybercriminal, when really what they were looking at was just a professional security researcher's lab. And this is where you can really see how the exact same evidence can be twisted to tell two completely different stories. The police looked at his gear and saw a criminal enterprise. Hill and his supporters saw standard research tools. The police pointed to a ransom email from his IP. His side argued that the email was totally useless. It didn't even have a Bitcoin address to send a ransom to. And what's really crucial here, the official story just completely glossed over his long history of being an ethical hacker.
And through this whole ordeal, Hill has been absolutely consistent. I did not do it. I am innocent. He's always argued that the system just didn't have the technical know-how to tell the difference between a security researcher and an actual criminal. And that history is exactly why his voice carries so much weight today. To a lot of people, he's kind of a Cassandra figure, the guy who told the truth and the system tried to silence him for it. Okay, so now we have the crucial context, right? There's this deep history of mistrust between the state and one of its key security experts. So let's bring that understanding back to 2025. Because this bank attack, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was just one piece of a much, much bigger digital assault on Uruguay's entire national infrastructure.
And this is so important to understand. The bank wasn't the only target, not by a long shot. Around the exact same time, another group called Pampa Leak was hitting the national education program. They were hitting civil aviation. They even hacked and leaked the president's personal cell phone number. All of a sudden, that official story of a single, contained IT incident at one bank just completely falls apart. This wasn't a glitch. This was a full-blown national cyber crisis. So all of this brings Uruguay to a massive crossroads. We're talking about its digital future, its national security, and maybe most importantly, public trust. And it all hinges on which of these two narratives, the official story or the whistleblower's reality, ends up winning out. Think about it. If the official story of denial wins out, public trust just evaporates. And the attackers? They see that there are no real consequences, and you better believe they'll be emboldened to hit even harder next time. But if the government embraces the truth of the attack, it could actually be a catalyst for some real positive change. We're talking stronger defenses, a justice system that actually understands cyber, and a chance to restore public faith. But if we're being realistic, the most likely outcome is probably a messy middle ground, right? The bank eventually gets its services back online, but the truth about that massive 700 gigabyte data breach, it's just never officially acknowledged. So the official story and the expert reality just keep existing side by side, leaving this permanent shadow of doubt and a whole lot of unresolved vulnerabilities. So how does Uruguay avoid that worst-case scenario? Well, the analysis points to 3 really clear steps. Step 1, mandatory transparency. You have to force institutions to report the full scope of a breach, how many gigabytes, who the attackers were within 72 hours. No more hiding. Step 2, judicial cyber literacy. You have to train the justice system so they actually understand this stuff and don't repeat the mistakes made in 2017. And finally, step 3, leverage your experts. Create protected, safe channels for people like Alberto Hill to share critical threat intelligence without fearing they'll be treated like the bad guys. And ultimately, that leaves us with a final, really critical question. In this crazy digital age we live in, when you have these complex threats and an institution's reputation is on the line, who do you trust to tell you what's really going on? When the official story clashes with the ugly technical truth, who do you believe? The answer to that question is going to define not just Uruguay's security, but probably our own as well.